Good morning, everybody, and happy Aloha Friday. Welcome this Friday morning to the Professional Service Group of Mercer County, PSG of Mercer County. In addition to being Aloha Friday, as it is every Friday, today is actually National Donut Day. And we have a nice little treat at PSG of Mercer County because we meet on Friday mornings. National Donut Day is always the first Friday of June, so we will always have a National Donut Day. We're just going through our announcements. If you want to go to your kitchen, grab a donut and have it on the meeting, that's fine. Officially, the day honors those members of the Salvation Army. Most of those were women who served donuts to the soldiers during World War I. And so National Donut Day was kicked off shortly after World War I, to honor the people that gave donuts to our soldiers. And of course, at PSG of Mercer County and lots of the other job support groups that are in the area, we like to use donuts or any sort of food item when we have a celebration, something like a landing or some other big event in our career. And so we'll be talking about that in just a little minute. But PSG, the Professional Service Group of Mercer County, we're a group that's here for you. Anybody that is in any kind of career transition, managing through a job loss, it doesn't matter why you've become in a job search right now. But of course, we do look to provide resources and information, a little bit of guidance, certainly on a weekly basis, these presentations to help you become more efficient and more effective in your own job search. We have several resources. I do mention these every week, but we always seem to get new members, a few new members each week. So for certainly their benefit, or maybe as a reminder to you, we have a LinkedIn group. It is called PSG of Mercer County. Everybody who's on this call, every one of our members are welcome to join the group. So in LinkedIn, I'm sure you all have a LinkedIn profile. In LinkedIn, you just search for the group, PSG of Mercer County, and there is a join button. I think it's on the right side. I haven't seen how they've laid out the screen lately. You click the join button, but we will immediately put you in pending status. And the reason why is we do check either attendance in our virtual meetings or the attendance in the past that are in personal meetings to make sure that people that are requesting, yourselves, have been to one of our meetings before. We're trying to keep out list collectors and people who are really looking to join our group for purely their own benefit without any thought of contributing or helping or being in the mindset of somebody who's a job seeker. So we do ask you just to be a little patient. Now, I don't keep a good, or I'm not able to keep a very strong attendance with these virtual meetings. We don't pre-register, so that kind of thing. There is a chat log and attendance log I can peek at, but some of those names that are on the computers don't always match you. So what I suggest is if you are joining our LinkedIn group for the very first time, send me an email. You can send it to psgofmercercounty@gmail.com and just say, hey, David, saw the meeting and I also signed up for the LinkedIn group. That way I know that I can quickly accept you into the group. We have over 1,500 members in the group. These are all people that either are or have been job seekers. They understand the process. They get the process, which means if you wind up needing to reach out to anybody in the group, maybe because you're doing your own research in your job search or you see that they're a connection in a company that you're interested in, there's a very good chance those people will contact you because they've been through this process before. They understand the importance of staying in touch with folks. Once in the group, post articles, post job leads, anything that you hear that you think you want to share with others. Read the posts that other people have, click the comment or the like button, start getting active, not just in our group, but in other groups so that LinkedIn sees that you are active. LinkedIn likes active people, and what we understand in their search algorithm is that when someone is searching for someone like you, not by you by name, but someone like you, people that have an all-star profile, a complete profile, and people that are active in LinkedIn both come higher up. First, you need the all-star status and then be active. So be a little active on LinkedIn, and that's one way to do it. We also have a website. Our website is now psgofmercercounty.org. Our website is more than just a landing page. It is over 120 pages of resources and content. And we've been putting in a little bit more effort in different parts in that page. how do we put more effort into 120 pages? We have a job boards page. I've talked about this before. Now, it's not job listings and jobs postings, but it's links to companies' career pages. And those are companies in our kind of geographic service area, Mercer County and the 6 border counties around Mercer County, which includes those of you overseas in Bucks County. And so do look at our jobs boards pages. We have been going through them, looking for new companies that are posting positions in those counties. Now, we tend to exclude like a lot of the fast food places. They tend to be very obvious. Every town has them. But there are lots of companies that, even though they're not based in those 7 counties, have offices and hire there as well. Take a look. We then link to their career pages. They maintain those pages, so we don't have to maintain the job listings. So go take a look at that. We've been also bolstering up our e-learning webpage. Somebody has got their microphone on. So they got the e-learning. It's under our professional development menu item. We now have 37 e-learning websites. So if you're interested in taking some sort of online training, that would be a good time for you to go take a look at one of those pages. Not all of those are free. Some of them are, some of them are not. So you'll have to take a look, but we do give you one-stop shopping to find 37 different e-learning websites. One of the things we do like to do, we can't do it easily and often right now, but we like to celebrate landings and successes. So we do have one friend of mine, Satnam Basal, had let me know he just landed as a project manager with J&J. So I was in touch with him and gave him a virtual congratulations. So, if you're close or if you're in the process of landing, if you've landed, maybe you got a part-time position, we call that perched. You didn't land, you perched. You want to just put that in the chat, we can recognize a little later. Maybe you're pretty far along in the interview process. You've got some you're pretty comfortable with that process now. Yeah, put that in the chat as well. I think people will appreciate knowing and reading from you and from others that there really is activity, a lot of positive activity in the job market, all things considered with the lockdown. So you can use chat for that as well. So in just a moment, I'll introduce George, but do want to remind you just a couple of ground rules. Do keep your audio, your microphone on mute. It's very important because as much as you don't intend, of course, to make any noise or interruption, there could be background noise or telephone that goes off or dog barking, whatever that is. So do be careful. And so we do say keep your microphone on mute. Throughout the program, I'll be peeking at the attendance, seeing who's on, and if there's any noise, I will be muting the microphone. Don't worry, George, I won't mute yours. Thanks. And your video, that's your call. If you want to keep your video camera on, that's fine. If you want to turn your video camera off, that's fine. A lot of us haven't had haircuts in a long time. If you're having a bad hair day, want to keep your video off, fine. No need to worry about that. We use the chat option here for Q&A, for questions and answers. The chat is in the upper right corner of your screen. Like I said, it looks like a little comic book bubble where they put the words. So click that and a chat window will open on the right side. And then in the chat, you can write a message, either to everyone or to just one person. For questions, I suggest you write it to everybody, because both George and I are going to be looking at the questions, and George is going to be pretty active with that. So if you just send it to me to ask a question of George, it might slow down the process a little. But if you want to send anybody a private message, you're able to do that through chat, no worries at all. We will be making this slide deck available online. It's actually just posted now this morning. It's on our website. We will be making the chat log available online. So if there are some chats, if someone posted an email address or something, those will all be available. And we will eventually post a link to the video. The chat log I can post quite quickly, but the video does take time for us to download and prep in order to put it on our website. And we do store all of our videos on our YouTube channel. So if you're in YouTube, you can look for PSG of Mercer County or go to our website, and on the right side of the website is a YouTube link. And so you can get it from there as well. Okay, so let me just check one thing. I'm terribly sorry. There we go. Yeah, just need to turn a caller off. I find that the people who phone in, it's a little harder for them with the keyboard controls on the phone, touch tone controls, to actually easily turn off their volume. Okay, so without further interruption, hopefully, I am just very pleased to welcome our speaker this morning, George Pace. George is an IT leader focusing on how to extract business value from the latest technologies. He is currently working to keep pace with cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and digital assistants to gain insights on how those technologies will impact the future of work. George is sharing his thoughts and insights on his YouTube channel. It's www.youtube.com/keeppace, youtube.com/keeppace, all one word. So you can stop by and subscribe. I am a subscriber and watch his chats. George holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from Seton Hall University and an MBA from the Rutgers Business School. PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome someone that I always look to keep pace with, Mr. George Pace.
Thank you, David, and good morning, everyone. So, for those that may have seen a previous version of this before, there were going to be subtle changes throughout. And what are those subtle changes, you may ask? Well, COVID-19, and I think we all understand the fact that the only constant in life is change, and I think we're experiencing this right now. And to show you how even this has changed, this is actually the first time I have ever had to modify a presentation mid-year. Typically what happens is I spend a year, I take my notes, a storyline comes out of my notes, and I create a presentation that I give to everyone each year. The presentation usually stands because I tend to be several months out or several months ahead of the current state. Little did I realize that this year was going to challenge me, as it were. Number two, as part of that, and again, as showing how I adapt or I adopt to change fairly quickly, I established a weekly Facebook webinar that's focusing initially on COVID-19, but now on digital disruption. Again, it's trying to give people some guidance as to the changes that are coming and what you can do to begin preparing or getting ahead of those challenges. I have links to all of this at the end of the presentation. The other thing I would tell you through this time is expect the unexpected. And one of the more interesting pieces of news that passed by my feed was this concept of new interview questions. And one I thought was really great was, well, what did you do during COVID-19? So if you were in transition, did you learn something new? What did you do to improve yourself? What did you do to get ready for what's next? So it's on one of my previous webinars where I talked about this, but again, this is all about change and being able to show people how can you adapt to what's going on around you. And I think that's a really critical skill going forward. So a couple of disclaimers. This deck reflects my latest thinking. I actually was updating it as soon as this morning, to be honest with you. It's been that relatively fluid. As you might guess, predicting the future is hard. If I could predict the future, I would have won several lotteries and I probably wouldn't be here. So while predicting the future is hard, providing guidance can be harder. And one of the things you'll notice on a lot of future of work predictions is the direction kind of gets really sketchy after a few very coarse-grained things. And my belief in why I put this presentation together is that people, well, I'll share another slide, but people don't necessarily take the time to understand the root cause of a problem. One of the themes you're going to see out of this is there's a reason why you can't give guidance, and that's because the future of work really is a complex issue. And keep that one in the back of your mind, because you're going to see it several times in the presentation. And the final reality is we could probably be talking about this for hours. And truth be told, even now, post-COVID, I think it's even more hours, simply because there are things that are changing our current normal to a new normal. So for those that haven't heard me before, I've been doing this for a while. I actually started around 2011, even though I've presented most of my career. I got involved with networking groups around 2009. I saw that most of the conversations were more focused on here and now, and a lot of what I do focuses on what's coming. So my first chunk of presentations fit into a what I'll call my social phase. And I wish I could tell you this was all pre-planned, because it wasn't. And a lot of this, you can read it. You connected how to use Twitter to find a job. To show you how much time I put into these, you can actually go on the how to use Twitter to find a job presentation. I did that back in 2013. And with the exception of Twitter expanding the size of the tweet, everything that's in that particular video is applicable and valuable today. We then started to talk about how do you use these to define yourself as a product and begin this differentiation of yourself using these tools. We then went through what was started digital disruption. Again, look at the dates in 2015. I moderated a panel in March. I actually did this concept of your career curriculum as to how do you begin finding out what it is you need to do and how do you prepare for it with all the resources online. You, the product part two, was just a continuation of that. It was just more ideas I had learned along the way. Everything I started to do really kicked things up several notches around 2017. This was Jobs of the Future, where I came up with the 10 steps to keep pace. It really was about, this stuff's coming, you got to get ahead of it. A piece of Jobs of the Future was about artificial intelligence. So I did, will AI take your job? How to AI proof your career? Those are up on my YouTube channel. And then finally, this presentation, which is the future of work. So as you can see, I've been fairly close to these disruptions. I've been fairly close to thinking about them. That's why I think the information I'm going to provide here to you is valuable today. Now, if you haven't seen one of my presentations, here's what you need to take away. Number one, there's a lot in this presentation, and I do it on purpose. I don't know how you like to, I don't know how you learn. I want you to see that this isn't some, crazy idea George has. I want you to see the totality of the space. That's number one. Number two, and I'll point to this and it's in red. Number two, if there is a secret sauce to everything that's coming, and I mean everything that's coming, it's about thinking differently. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you take what's coming and you try to munge it or bastardize it or shoehorn it into an old way of thinking, I am telling you, you're going to fail. This is about thinking about what this change means and how you go about changing your thoughts and your vision as to how you implement it. I can't stress this enough. Number three, my presentations are actionable. You are going to be able to do at least one thing today, ideally many more. And this last one, I wish I had a better picture of it. It actually shows up, I guess, better on a webinar. This is meant to be differential calculus, and this gets to the whole differentiating yourself. And what do I mean by differentiating yourself? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit further, but as you see my deck, keep thinking about not only what information can you get from this, but how can you apply it to make yourself stand out? So this is a pet peeve of mine. And I always ask people, and as I look at problems, to me, this is where you start. And I think, if you ask somebody a question, how do you solve a problem if you don't understand what the problem is? As I used to tell my kids when they were growing up, you have to get your knowns. And the answer to this particular question is you can't. I mean, you can rush and do some feel-good stuff, but if you don't understand what the problem is, it's going to be very hard to solve it. And the reason I bring this up is that when we come to the problem of the future of work, this is what I see a lot of. People define the problem space as, well, the jobs of the future are going to be different. And the solution that they bring to this quote unquote problem is, well, you have to go out and learn new skills. Well, guess what? That's been a constant for a long time. It just happens a lot quicker nowadays. Or, my other favorite, become a lifelong learner. Well, yeah, but okay. Oops, sorry, and then you get to this blah, 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 which is what I see people giving out as guidance. Now, I don't think any of this information helps anybody. It's kind of a nice guide, it's kind of a nice soundbite, but there's nothing here that provides something actionable for you to say, here's how I get ready for what's coming. The closest thing I have seen to any actionable guidance was this particular diagram that came out of NASA. And I believe this was released sometime around 2018. And they quote their future of work framework. You can actually look this up on Google, it'll pop right up. And fortunately, we're on a webinar, because when you do this live, it kind of is a busy slide. But if you look at this, there's some interesting pieces. They have a mission, they have people, they have place, they have technology, and then each one of these themes talks to a specific intersection. So in one intersection, it's mission and people, people and place, and then mission, people, and place. So each one of these dots represents an intersection or a space. And finally, their future of work culture, as it were, is going to be the intersection of all four circles. Now, if we go through these themes quickly, we'll see things like designing for agility, redefining talent, learning and developing for a lifetime, deploying talent, mobilizing careers, embracing modern workspaces, value sharing and security, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you are looking at this as an individual, I don't think there's a single thing here that helps you. However, from a corporate perspective, this at least sets some guidance as to what an enterprise or what a company could do to get ready for the future of work within their particular organization. Now, I'm actually going to leverage this diagram. Well, I had leveraged this diagram, and I actually changed this slide ever so slightly because there's actually something missing from this. And this is what I picked up on last year, and I created my own version of this particular diagram. And the thing that's missing is societal impact. And remember, I've updated this now for COVID. Think about all of the changes that COVID is introducing that really isn't talked about here. Now, you're going to see how I integrate this later, but I wanted to show you why I said this was the closest thing I had found. So let's get back to my premise. We can't solve a problem until we understand the problem space. And I think these next 12 to 15 slides do a pretty good job of helping to at least frame it. So the first one, we clearly know that there are technologies that change consumer habits. Now, I found this image up on the internet, and I don't want to go to the store. You have Amazon as the disruptor. I need instant access to information. I have Google as the disruptor. I don't want to use public transportation. You have Uber. I don't want to go to the movies. You have Netflix. I'm tired of government currencies. You have Bitcoin. I'm going to add to this list. I don't need to be at the office. We now have, Zoom technologies like Zoom and GoToMeeting, and all of these technologies are now changing consumer behaviors and consumer preferences. Now, when you see FOW at the bottom of these slides, this is simply the future of work impact. This is really impacting everybody. It's going to impact individual preferences. Think about the impact to this in the taxes that society has implemented on certain goods, services, and businesses. And then obviously, this is going to change business models in a number of different ways. The next, because the barriers of entry have been loaded to things like cloud computing as an example, there are certain things that companies can do much faster. So when they try and disrupt the marketplace, they can start very small and grow quickly, simply if they're meeting a need that isn't fulfilled. If we just look at Uber and Lyft, we can see, you have the normal taxi that had been in existence with medallions and the structure forever, and companies like Uber and Lyft have quickly impacted those business models. Again, Uber and Lyft have changed individual preferences as to how they get these types of transportation options. But again, societies had to adapt to it. the business models have been impacted. Now, technology that disrupts established business models. The initial slide that I had talked about banks, and there's kind of two different schools, right? You have younger kids that want to do everything on their phone, and then you have existing banks, like in this case Capital One, that actually had branches. Well, what do you do if you're trying to make both demographics happy? And the challenge is this is a real struggle for some companies that are figuring, do you have branches or don't you? Now we're going to introduce something new. You're probably going to see these banks go to contactless, where there's lack of touching and interaction between people. I would say another thing that's coming out that's very early is this idea of contract tracing, where is your phone now going to be part of the business model where if you go into work and they see that you have been exposed to somebody that has COVID-19, what are you going to do? So this is an up-and-coming disruption possibility. One of my favorites was this concept, and I did this back when I talked about jobs of the future. This was actually one of the principles, as it were. Anything that can be threatened will be threatened. And this particular one, I didn't know this, but I do now. Local newspapers were relied. They had a revenue stream coming from the obituaries. I mean, who's thinking of that? Well, what's happening is that funeral homes are actually putting obituaries on their website. Well, suddenly that's putting additional pressure on local newspapers to stay afloat. So again, just because there's a business model that's worked for a long time doesn't mean it can't be disrupted. Now, on this particular one, this general topic was about the future of retirement. And when you're talking about, Social Security, shrinking employer sponsored benefits, lowered savings rates, fundamentally, we've been seeing some pressure or some impact just on retirement in general. And I wasn't delving into the financial aspects of this in so much as it's a piece of this future of work puzzle. And I would just add to it with the recent unemployment and the impact of people that furloughed or shed jobs during this period of time, it's only made this particular issue more challenging. And then through all of this, we've been distracted with a great many things in the news lately, but we aren't even keeping up to date on what are the new technologies that are coming out and the things that they're going to make capable, and how long is it going to take for us to see that impact? Now, I could have added the contact tracing API here as well, but you can see simplistic things like an electronic tattoo that monitors the heart for days, chips that can potentially help with Alzheimer's. These are amazing things that are going to create new jobs, require new skills, and they're not even here yet, or they're in their infancy. Now, this one is part of the new normal as far as I'm concerned, but we get to this concept of skills are constantly changing, and they're changing quickly. And in changing quickly, I like this particular one, specifically this last line, where AI is impacting financial advisors and money managers. And the sentence to focus on is this last one that says, this is especially so in the rapidly changing money management arena, where new technologies are increasingly either going to be used by managers, that should be underlined, by managers, or potentially used against them. That's a powerful statement. And this, you want to close your eyes and pretend nothing's happening, or you want to ignore the change that's coming, you do so at your own peril, because this is coming whether you like it or not. And if you are reactive to this, I'm telling you, you're doing it wrong. If you're proactive, that's your best weapon to stay current or keep pace with this particular issue. And then let's think about new core competencies that are coming out. With Zoom, this whole idea of being able to be a professional at video conferencing, video networking, video interviewing, each one of those has its own dynamic, and it's probably a skill you need to grow now rather than later. So again, This is something, and it was funny, I think I did on my last webinar, we even have a new term, Zoom fatigue, of people that are just fatigued because they're on the camera all day long. So these are yet another set of skills, and all of this has happened over the past, whatever it's been, 3 months. Now, this isn't old, but we're seeing a bunch of different things, and I could have added to this. So in this particular one, Nike is coming up with a subscription model for sneakers, right? So at a bare minimum, you would think that if they have a subscription service, that it's going to put pressure on the brick and mortar establishments. Now, the other thing, where was I going with this? Oh, we also know, and let's see if I put this up here. We also know that online ordering has increased, I think it was by about 15 to 20%. There was an Amazon one I saw the other day. I think it had to do with groceries, if I'm not mistaken. So now we are building, or COVID has established, another technology or another approach for people getting the goods and services that they want. Again, once that investment has been made, once people get comfortable with that, once what's the term? Once they're no longer afraid of using those platforms, suddenly this potentially changes how we are going to buy products and services in the future. I'm not saying it will, I'm just saying it can. And it changes behavior. As I go through all of these slides, think about the behaviors that have been changed and the demands that it now creates. So another interesting one that I found was this changing consumer taste, and it was about restaurants. So as fewer people were going to restaurants, or the millennials, as it were, weren't going to restaurants, what the restaurateurs were doing was buying up or using warehouse space. And they were actually creating the meals in the warehouse and doing these delivery services to send the food out. So again, in a world where people don't necessarily want to go out, or they don't want to engage, this is potentially another way for them to get that particular service, but it's delivered in a much different fashion. And this is always my favorite in my slides. I always love putting up the jobs that don't exist yet, but will or could. So let's see. We got the first one, which is the child assistant bot programmer. That's a good one, right? Humanoid robots will help children play safely. Okay. We have cricket farmers, because they have they're high protein, and we may have to deal with food shortages, or how we feed people. The memory optimizer, oops, got ahead of myself. Memory optimizer, where people's memory will be augmented through digital implants and judicious, this is the key sentence, judicious memory erasure, which is pretty scary. And then the nostalgist, where people who want a world from the best parts of life 80 to 100 years ago. So we could assume this may be a virtual reality play. Well, that's what I had for my initial presentation. And for this one, in a world where we're going to be worried more about health and who's sick, and how do we make sure that we don't spread a disease, I created these titles, by the way. So maybe we see a chief hygiene officer or a chief contactless officer. I don't know, but it's possible. Earlier in the presentation, I said you really need to embrace thinking differently and not shoehorning ideas into the way you used to think. And I think these two examples are a perfect explanation or example as to why. So the first one is LG has AI to tell you if you're using your refrigerator wrong. Now, I'm not exactly sure how you do all of that, right? Like, don't block the airflow of your fridge, or put too much soap in your washing machine. Okay, but this is the one that caught my attention, and this was at CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Show that happens in Las Vegas every year. And in this particular one, they're putting cameras in the refrigerator. The cameras are figuring out what food you have in the refrigerator. And based on how much food and the types of foods you have left, it suggests recipes for you. Amazing stuff. But now think if you're a product manager. Were you thinking about these new capabilities? Did you dream of those capabilities And are you implementing them into your products? So this is where we get into that future of work and thinking differently. Probably the best, yes, Mark, the memory bit was in Total Recall. So this is a perfect example of you may be a great product manager today, but if you're not aware of these changes and capabilities that are coming, you need to. Now, the other challenge here is we're seeing challenges to organizational structures. Now, the one on the left about flat organizations, this is not new in any sense of the word. We've known about this for a while. But the flip side is that, in some instances, like warehouses, people are working now with robots or much more automation. So clearly, this is impacting the organization as you knew it. Now, obviously, some fields are going to be less impacted than others, but again, we're just defining the problem space. Another one is we have new tools. Now, how familiar are you with the tools? In this particular one, they designed, synthesized, and validated a drug from the ground up in 46 days using artificial intelligence. Again, something that usually or has traditionally taken years to do, they were able to condense that time period down to something much smaller. So again, understanding the tools in your particular space is something you're going to need to do. This is another one that's been going on for a while. It's just part of the problem space as well. We have multiple generations in the workforce. What are we going to do with them? Well, this was when it was a labor shortage, but as older people retire, are there enough skilled people behind them? Are you going to have alternate work arrangements for them where they work part-time to pass some of that wisdom and knowledge to other generations? Again, it's just an issue that corporations or enterprises are going to have to deal with. And even for all the disruption that I just talked about, now we have to understand the challenges of digital transformation. There's a shortage of skilled people that either can do this or understand how to design these types of things. Budgets are always a problem because people don't understand, how do you do the new stuff as well as technical debt. And there is resistance to changing what used to work or shutting down those legacy systems. So this is just a current thing. We've been dealing with this for a while. Now let's get to the last two scary pieces. You can now practice firing someone in virtual reality. So HR now has the tools in virtual reality to rehearse how they're going to tell somebody they're letting them go. Well, that's pretty scary. And then if we take this a step further, artificial intelligence, we have the ability to create fake images or put somebody's face on an existing image. This particular one was able to fake a UN speech in 13 hours. So these technologies, there's got to be some oversight as to how to make sure they're being used properly and not for malicious purposes. And finally, I think this is my finally, no one's exempt from this. So, we've seen this, that with everybody being pushed into more, collegiate type activities, the U.S. needs more tradespeople. But then on the flip side, the factories are demanding, if you look at what Elon Musk is doing with all the automation that they're doing, that they want white collar education for blue collar workers. So again, this is another challenge that's part of the overall problem space. So what can we extract from this? And first of all, I'm sure that wasn't comfortable for most everybody on the webinar. Change is tough. I mean, for me, I embrace change on a daily basis. I get it. I like it. I know how to deal with it. But I do get people get uncomfortable because it changes the way they've done it, or they measure, on how well they can do something new. It takes time. It disrupts your schedule. I get it. But the future of work is not a single issue. The title may suggest the future of work is a singular issue. This is a much more complex issue. And anything that can be impacted will be impacted. So, we went through a time where, in a sense, there was a perception things were safe, or static. And that's really not the reality to this. It hasn't been safe. It's just we thought it was safe. If you didn't get it out of all of those links, you're going to need multiple skills. That's just going to be a fact. Now, how many you're going to need is going to be applicable to whatever it is that you do, but you're going to need multiple skills. And the real question is, how do you identify what those skills really are? Well, now we're going to get back to my version of the diagram, because we're going to take everything that we've just covered and put it into something that organizes it. And with that, I give you my version of what the future of work ecosystem looks like. And this is the individual perspective. So when I showed you the NASA one, NASA was a corporate view of the problem space. This is my view of the problem space. So first we have the individual. The individual is going to have to change. The individual is, Gary, let me get to that, Gary. Thank you. Let me do it now, Gary. So Gary's question is, about white collar education to perform blue collar tasks. Well, if we look at how much automation is there, the problem space is you're now dealing with computer terminals. You're now dealing with computer software. You are now dealing with fixing these robots, as it were. So the traditional blue collar job, which was, let's go and craft these things or assemble the parts and pieces, and here's the tooling that we have, it becomes much more about, not only do you need that particular skill in some instances, but you also now need to bring in all of the current technology and understand what that means if something breaks down on the assembly line. And if the computer is telling you to do that, being able to have those other skill sets above and beyond the blue collar work. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing in the factories, especially with even the automation or the robots. If you're telling a robot to go off and get you equipment, you have to be cognizant of that piece of technology, where you're probably not going to get that out of the trade schools. You may need some form, even an associate's degree, to get that additional insight. So to the ecosystem, from my perspective, the individual is where we are. We interact with both society, and society can have an impact on the individual and vice versa. Technology, we know, is just a constant change. And then finally, we're all interacting with the business. Now, if I take this a step further, I took each one of those intersections, and we're going to be talking about each one of those intersections going forward. Now, the first one between individual and society, really for now, we'll just talk about networking and communities. Individual and technology became lifelong learning. Society and business was societal alignment. So as society makes preferences to how the people want to live and act, they create rules and laws, and the business is impacted by that. Number 4 is business has their existing technology, but consumers, well, there's always new technology implementing what businesses do, so I'm getting ahead of myself. Personal branding is where an individual is trying to portray their image out to society to get a job at a business. Societal transformation is, as there's more technology that people want, society needs to adapt to it. 7, workforce alignment is, now that businesses are adapting new technologies, they need a workforce that can help them implement it. And then finally, between society, technology, and business are going to be the corporate frameworks and investments, where business is either helping universities or helping communities to get up to speed, so that, again, we're all one big happy entity. And in the middle is when all of these intersect. To me, this is what the future of work is all about. So now what we're going to do is go through all 12 of these pieces. We're going to start with the 4 big circles first, and then we're going to talk about the intersections between each one of them. And did I say earlier in the presentation this is complex? This is why it's complex. So let's talk about the core ecosystems. So, the first, I'm going to define the individual ecosystem as anybody that wants to participate in the future of work. And there are some very basic realities. And these are facts, right? It's not uncomfortable. Let's get the elephant that's in the room. Skills have a shorter shelf life. Yeah, trust me. I can't tell you how much time I continue to invest in my own personal education. If anybody knows this, trust me, I live this first one. There is a lot of uncertainty what's needed out there. Think about your life before COVID hit. Now all of a sudden with COVID hitting, what is going to be the impact when you go to work, and what has COVID changed that is now going to require you to learn something new? I had a conversation with David Schuckman about this way long ago, and this was an age-based question. And to me, I'm still not convinced that this is a quote unquote age-based problem, in so much as it's a value proposition. And I've commented on LinkedIn many times to this, but if your skills are current and you know how to take and help people get to navigate through this disruption that's coming, that's a really valuable skill. If you're good at things that they're moving away from, that becomes a little more problematic. So I think there's a lot. I could probably do a presentation just based on these age-based questions, but I think it's how long do you want to be in the workforce, and can you help take a vast body of experience and help people navigate this change? Again, there's too much constant change. There's way too much to know. I think another problem for most people is that there's very little branding, and they don't know how to brand or differentiate themselves. We're even seeing consumers demanding more of the system. This one came from a consultant I was working with that said there are people that if they work today, they want to get paid today, which is a completely different mindset than we're accustomed to. And then, of course, the individuals are dealing with just financial challenges in general, including longer job transitions and potentially delaying or significantly delaying retirement. Now, society in this context is really any government or locale where an individual resides. Now, to me, if we just look at what's happened with COVID, society has made some decisions. And one of them was both at the individual and business level, where it's created laws or guidances to, individuals staying home, businesses closing down, and the rules about when they're going to open. So society is clearly a piece of this puzzle, which is why I didn't agree with what NASA had put together. Some of the older things that we know about, we know the education system was designed in an industrial era. So, yes, there's changes that are being slowly made to it over time, but thematically, have we gotten rid of those things that aren't as applicable anymore? We know society has to deal with privacy laws, this whole contact API and, what does that mean? Facial recognition was another one. What does society do when they're trying to promote, new jobs in technology, but now those technologies disrupt existing businesses like a Lyft or Uber? You have a tax base that's now impacted. What do you do? We know that societal dynamics were evolving, diversity, multi-generation in the workplace, that's not anything new. And then, the last one, as we're seeing this quote unquote gig economy come out of this role of either being remote, gig, or consultant, what does society do about that? Because again, this gets back to services that they offer and potentially taxes or some form of a tax impact. In terms of business, truth be told, I don't really care if this is public or private. I probably, even though government's not a business, I might even be tempted to put them in here. But really, it's any business that we're going to interact with. And, I think companies have their set of challenges as well. They're up against constant business disruptions, technology like cloud, which lowers the barrier of entry. It's one of my favorites during the dot-com era. The VCs needed to fund these companies to go build out their ecosystems. They don't need to do that anymore. All of this world is a disruption. We talk about agile workforces. Well, this is really going to be a shock to their system because we're going from a command and control, which is what most organizations were built on, to a much more collaborative workforce. Well, boy, oh boy, that's going to take a lot of time to remove that muscle memory from command and control and get to a more collaborative work environment. We continue to have the digitalization versus legacy conundrum. The changing customer commands, they want it now, they want it on multiple devices, they want it easier to use. Companies are still dealing with the multi-generation diverse workforce issue. We've talked about the flatter organizations, and of course, we're seeing more jobs during COVID being reduced via automation, RPA, robotic process automation. You might want to look at that. There's a lot that is potentially impacting jobs right now during COVID that we're going to see on the back end when hiring frees back up. And then the other question to think about is, when you get to a contractor versus an employee, are we going to be in this on-demand skill environment where, is it easier and faster to go get that resource that you need, or do you train the talent that you have? I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other, but I think that's just another issue that businesses deal with. Technology ecosystem, if there's one that's been pretty constant, it's been this. We see that every year technology seems to evolve rapidly and much faster. And I think one space that we're going to see a lot about is contactless, where it's technologies that you don't have to touch anything. So it's, I think, Internet of Things becomes one of these. Sensors for when you enter a room, the fact that you can wave things and not touch things. I think that's going to be a big next thing we'll see. Technology automation. Once upon a time, we talked about technology enhancing individuals. And one of the things we're seeing is that we're automating, doing much more automation, which is impacting the types of jobs that you have. This concept of technical commoditization, which I'm going to talk about, happening much faster, which is, things that used to have a lot of resources to support and maintain don't anymore. That's the short of it. Dealing with technical debt, this puts a stress on, you can't, the more new stuff you get, the more old stuff you're still supporting. And then, these technologies are increasing how much you need to know, and do you understand how to use them faster than ever before? So those are the four big circles. Now, we're going to dive into each of those intersections. And trust me, when I tell you I only have an hour to cover this, each of those intersections is probably its own ecosystem. I'm just covering this at a high level to give you a sense of what you should be thinking about and what you can do. So the first one's going to be networking and communities. And, as Frank Kovacs from the Breakfast Club always says, your network is your insurance policy. And your goal in the future of work is to become a master networker. Now, that's going to be networking, communication. I really should add up on future of work skills, video conferencing or video meetups like this. And, when you're at a networking group, and I was just talking to David Chuckman about this yesterday, we've been having some back channel conversations as to if all networking goes, via these Zoom or teleconferences, you start losing the ability to do face-to-face networking. And what does that really mean? Does virtual networking become the new normal? And what is this going to look like? Again, we're still having conversations and ideating through this, but at a minimum, you got to get yourself out there. And in a virtual world, how do you grow your network? And I think that's going to be a challenge. Those that figure that out, I think they're that much farther ahead. And then, there's two other things. Amazon, I'm going to give you an Amazon crowdsourcing Q&A example that they did for their Alexa. And then, there's other communities out there, either in Reddit, Kaggle, LinkedIn, doesn't really matter. But these are all about getting yourself out there, engaging, building your digital footprint. So in this particular one, Amazon created this thing called Alexa Answers, where their AI can only do so much. And what they were doing was having people answer the questions. And you can actually use this to say, look, I've been participating in this and learning more about the Alexa ecosystem. So to me, this just becomes a way to differentiate yourself. It's a project that's tangible, and it's something that you could say, look, I've been engaged in the platform and I learned something new. Lifelong learning. Now, this is the tough one. Now, when it comes to lifelong learning, I am of the belief you have to learn something new every day. And you really have to change your thinking to go from proactive thinking to reactive thinking. If you try to react to the changes that are coming, I really don't think you're going to be successful. Now, the challenge here is that I can tell you the general skills, and we're going to talk a bit about that, but specialized skills, because I don't know what each of you do, that specialized skill, there's really nobody that can tell you what to do. You're going to have to do that level of work. But things like critical thinking, creativity, and innovation, those typically rank very high as these skills to start embracing now, but there's others. I said this last year, I believe, I'm saying it again this year, you have to start allocating 30 minutes a day. More would be better, but you have to put time aside to start delving into this. You have to build a news feed of what's happening in your particular industry or line of sight. You have to become the SME or the subject matter expert of something. Find critical thinking or creativity puzzles to get you starting to get out of your comfort zone. And the last one is, if you're not financially astute, I would tell you, you should put some financial education and strategy in place. This gets us to that whole retirement and time in transition issue. Societal alignment. Now, this is an interesting one that's happened, right? With all of the restrictions that society has put on businesses during COVID. So, one of the themes is when you're trying to find or prepare for what's coming, you really have to think about what society is focusing on or the direction that they're taking us. And your goal is to understand what challenges are these companies having to react or adapt those changes. Maybe it's government regulation you need to be aware of, what's going on in society, being more aware of what's going on there. And I think some of this plays into your interview skills, where if you can talk about this or understand the impact of how society is impacting a company's business model, I think that gets you some positives during the interview process. A couple of these, there was the gig economy law. This was something that was going on in California and New Jersey, where they were trying to come up with legislation specific to the Uber and Lyft. Unfortunately, they didn't think it through enough, so it had impact on existing consultants. Watch for what government's doing. There's two here. COVID, just in general, right? What New York and New Jersey did was very different than what a lot of other states did for various reasons, right? It's population density and a bunch of other stuff. Society 5.0, I'm going to talk about shortly. That's something in Japan. Something as simplistic as FedRAMP certification. For those that don't know, the federal government actually has a group, a team or whatever, that is actually certified cloud providers. So if any government entity wants to use the cloud, they have to leverage off the work of what FedRAMP did. So it's a good thing to know. What's going on with educational partnerships as our businesses coming back and providing society with some monies, or are they creating organizations that you could become part of? And there's another website that's out there. It's from Dell. It's called Realizing 2030. If you actually just look up Realizing 2030, you'll find it. But there was a whole section at the bottom that was called A New Era in Government. The fourth one, technical disruption alignment. So earlier in the presentation, I said to you, you need to think differently. And what I'd like to do is give you a very quick summary of what that means when it comes to technology. So the takeaway here is that as technology continues to change, it's going to change how we enable or how we consume or how we use technology. So in this particular example, I'm going to give you the quote unquote old school way of thinking. And once upon a time, I don't really care who the company is, they would have to go and get a private data center or a building. They would then build it to the specs of air conditioning and cooling and wiring and whatever. They would then load it with whatever hardware that they decided they needed. That hardware had its own operating system. On that operating system, they probably put a runtime. On that runtime, they may have either built a bespoke application or they put a business application. And then They have the typical operations in terms of security and blah, 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 blah. And this model at a high level has pretty much been standard for, I don't know, 40 some odd years. Now we got this thing called cloud. And all of a sudden, and this is where I'm going to use the word commoditized, this concept of taking the private data center and hardware, in a sense, has been commoditized. There's a company that now handles that, and all you're doing is buying compute time. The second one is serverless. And, in a sense, and again, this is not exact, I'm doing it more as a getting you thinking differently. This concept of serverless is there's always a service underneath it. You're just dealing now with there's a server underneath it. You're dealing with a service. So in some instances, you're just saying, yo, service, go do this for me. You tend to see a lot of this in AI is one of them, but you are now not worried about the runtime and operating system anymore. You just basically take your code, you give it to the service, and the service runs it. There's new ways of building applications, they're called microservices, where instead of building one big monolithic application, you build very small applications. And then there's this other thing called an API economy where not only, well, I'm going to show you one other piece, where companies like weather.com as an example, you can actually have a program, call an API, that goes out to weather.com and brings that result back. Once again, instead of an entire business app that you use a small portion of, you use the pieces that you need. But wait, there's more. RPA, which is robotic process automation, all that's doing is automating the steps that an individual would have to either create or utilize some of these services. Much like API is an individual piece of functionality, SaaS, which is things like ServiceNow as an example, or Workday, take capability that's not core to an organization, and they have basically extracted it and made it a commodity. And the last one I would give you is when we start talking about AI or cognitive abilities, what's happening now is they're assuming that all of this infrastructure and data exists. And what they're really doing is taking this new AI functionality and having it examine all of that to come up with new value or to come up with insights. What I want you to take away from this particular diagram is that if you try and take everything over here and somehow shoehorn it all the way back over here, it's not going to work. I can't say this enough times. So you need to see how this is changing. You need to see how your resources get allocated differently. And you need to be thinking about how you apply this on a go-forward basis, not a go-back basis. So one last little note on this. If your elevator pitch is that you know how to run a data center, basically your elevator pitch is saying this. Your elevator pitch isn't addressing any of this. It's a subtle difference, but it really means a lot. In terms of personal branding, to me, this is about how do you differentiate yourself? Why you and not someone else? Now, as I like to say, yes, I know I was born with a last name I can do something with. I get to help you keep pace with technology. What that does for me is no matter what content I share, it's in my storyline. And people now know it's about cloud, it's about disruption, it's about AI. These are the things that I do. What I would say to you is figure out how you get your brand established. You might not have a last name, you might want to be you may have to come up with your own tagline as an example. Should you get your own branded website? Maybe. I'm a big believer in a visual resume. I'm actually working on a project where if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll be sharing it in the next week or so on this concept of the visual resume. Number 3 is my big one. And for no matter how many times I say it, I never see people do it in any great detail. You need to share what you're doing. You need to share how you're learning, and you need to share how it's changing your thinking. And if you blog regularly, and as I like to say, let's say today you're an A, and tomorrow you want to become a Q, and you can define A and Q however you want to define it. Well, if you don't have the experience to be a Q, What are you going to say, or what are you going to show to an employer that gets you from being an A to a Q? And what I would suggest is you do that by blogging regularly. Here's what I've read. Here's what I've learned. Here's how I would apply it. Here's how I changed my thinking. Here's why I think they're right. Here's why I think they're wrong. But what you're doing is, instead of just posting out a link to some content, you're showing people how it's changing you and how you're thinking forward and how you're going to help others go forward rather than, stay static. And again, even on LinkedIn, I would say promote yourself and your successes, right? You're going to be your best advertiser as you were, but you need that content so that people can say, wow, know what this person is, know what they do. These are just things to me during the interview process that I would share with you. Again, think about an interview being forward versus backward. Are you helping them solve a problem, and their problems are probably being impacted by what's coming? So, are you aware of the disruptions going on in that business? To me, number 2 is really critical. I'll know within 2 minutes if you're current or not. Is your digital vocabulary current? And if it's not, I'm going to know in seconds. Are you okay with faster rates of change? Have you any experience with any of this? Do you have a vision based on what's happening to the thing that you're a part of or that you're good at? Did you establish your brand? Because that's a takeaway before and after your interview. Are you growing your personal network? Do you have a digital footprint? To me, these are all pieces of differentiating yourself in the market going forward. Number 6 is societal transformation. Societies are going to need to evolve for a lot of different reasons. What I would just say is you really have to keep an eye on what society is doing, because if they come up with laws and direction and whatever it is, companies and people need to react to it. So, you need to again, just keep your awareness up. I'm going to give you a couple of them here. The first is Society 5.0. In Society 5.0, this is something that Japan's been working on for a while. I think Work 4.0, I put that over here. Yeah, Work 4.0 is the EU's version of this. But basically what they're saying is that we've gone from Society 1.0, which was hunting and gathering, to agricultural, which was 2.0, to industrial, which is 3.0, to information, which is where we're at today. And in Society 5.0, I mean, you can read this, right? They're to achieve a human-centered society in which anyone can enjoy a high quality of life full of vigor. They're going to do this by incorporating advanced technologies in diverse industries and social activities, and fostering innovation to create new value. So, whatever comes out of this, both humans, people, and companies are going to be impacted. The other one, and this is free if you go out to McKinsey, they have a newsletter. And if you look at all of the different aspects of this, it's covering pretty much anything you care about. What industry that you're in, the function that you're interested in, and the region that you're in, and then which one of these that you want to get. So some of this work is always there are people that are doing it for you. You just need to find it. Number 7, when we start talking about just the intersection of individuals, business, and technology, again, because I don't know what you do, it's hard to give you direction on the details of what you do. Rather, understand what the general skills are that you need, and then what is it that is unique to what you do. So to me, start thinking about a wider range of job titles that are out there, either a consultant, gig worker, or I saw one, digital nomad. I just gave me a chuckle. Certifications are probably a good thing. Now, I'm not telling you to get every certification known to man, but there are probably some base ones that you can get. Intro to cloud is probably a good one. Figure out, I'm not telling you to go AI, because AI is a little deeper. Maybe learn a little bit more about data could help. And in some instances, maybe it's worth your while to go to trade school. Why go into a completely different career? And then from the gig economy, one of the things that's coming out is, Mark, I'll check that in a minute, Mark. That might be it though. And then really learn from the gig economy. One of the things that's going on in the gig economy is they're coming up with a number of applications and tools that are talking to various financial issues and healthcare issues. So even if you're not a gig employee today, there's a lot you can learn from the gig economy. And the last one, companies just can't sit by and pretend that they're not impacted. They're going to need talented people. And what you're seeing is these companies are investing. They're giving checks to universities, they're giving checks to society or local governments, and they're really trying to figure out how they can make this work. Now, things to look for, I would tell you, find companies with future of work frameworks that are in place. I know a lot of companies are in the process of putting together their future of work teams, but find out what that means and what their expectations are coming out of that. If you do a little search, like I know Cisco was trying to train, I think it was, I don't remember, 1 million people, and I thought it was a lot, but 1 million people or so in terms of networking. Those are company-sponsored educational things. And again, companies that have been invested in either universities, colleges, or local schools, all of this is something that you, at least from a networking perspective, should align yourself with. So, putting all of this into context, right? I know I've given you a lot, but the thought process here is, now you're going to interview. And as part of that interviewing process, I think if you can bring more of these ideas together and you can have a discussion with them about looking forward versus looking backward, as I like to say, sometimes I hear elevator pitches, and elevator pitches sound like, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm great at every single thing your company's moving away from. Please hire me." Now look at what I have here. Are you proactive? Do you have a brand? In what capacities are you going to work? Can you demonstrate your thought leadership going forward? Do you understand how society is potentially impacting that company or their business model? Do you understand what technologies that they're struggling with or trying to get to? Can you show how your skill sets align with where they're trying to go? Are you aware of how that company is trying to change its culture to get there? This is a very different way of approaching an interview, and it's going to make you a much more interesting candidate, at least as far as I'm concerned. So a couple of last things in closing, because I think I'm pretty much at the hour. For those that don't know, and again, I like to show my creative side. I've had so much content that over the holidays, I did something called the 12 Skills of Christmas. So if you go out to my YouTube channel and you look at one of the playlists, you'll actually see all 12 episodes sung to the 12 days of Christmas. So I'm not singing it here, but there's a lot of actionable stuff. They're about 3 minutes each that really talk about what you should be getting ready for to be better prepared for the months and years ahead. And the last thing I'll share with you, and again, I mentioned it early in the presentation, I've been doing a weekly webinar on this. It started with COVID, but we're now into just digital disruption. It's every Sunday at 9. It's on my Facebook page. And on the left-hand side, you'll see videos show up. You just click on videos, and the first one that pops up is live, because I normally start like a minute or two before 9. And they go for about a half an hour. And then, over time, when I get a chance, I trim the dead space at either end of it, and I put it up on my YouTube channel. So if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see the actual edited version of this. So, if you just go to my YouTube channel, where is it? My YouTube channel, and subscribe to it, as soon as it gets uploaded, you'll get alerted. The webinars are on my Facebook page, Keep Pace, and I have to update my website, but this is the different ways to keep pace with me. And I thank you for attending this. I hope you found it valuable. And as part of the branding exercise I talked about, I even created my own personal brand, which is technology moves fast. You can move faster if you keep pace with technology. So that's what I had, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, or I hope it gave you some things to think about. And let's see. I think I got most of the questions. Hang on a second here. Let me, Mark, let me see if that link. Hold on a second. Where am I? I do here. Why isn't that working? Mark, let me double check that, but I think, why can't I copy out of this? So I can type this quickly.
Is this the McKinsey newsletter you're looking for?
Yeah, well, you can register. You can go to.
No, I'm just asking because in case some people aren't reading the question, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, there's a Mark in the chat put down. Why can't I copy this? Let me see if I can do it on the keyboard. It's not letting me. Let me copy this. Oh, I got to do it with keyboard. That's why.
Oh, go to meeting must be taking you up a screen control or.
Yeah, that might. I think that might be it, Mark.
Okay, give it a try.
Sure. Yeah. So did everyone get why this is such a complex space? This is
your opportunity, folks. If you'd like to ask George a question, we've got a few minutes, certainly. Use the chat to do so. We'll be just peeking at that online. And otherwise, in another couple minutes, we'll just quickly wrap up. But George, thank you. Incredibly insightful. Folks, you have no idea how much research that George puts into these programs. Both, I guess I'm glad that you continue to do that in some of the time that you have now, a little downtime that you have, that you're able to even update it to be as current as, well, today, and the impact of pandemic and COVID-19.
Well, considering, I mean, I pulled it all from the webinars that I've been doing, so it's
Sure.
and so everyone knows. I mean, if you knew the reading I did over the course of a week, oh my God, I tell people it's a how do I say this? It's something I got used to doing a long time ago, and I'm so used to it. Darcy, let's see. Darcy's got one here. Hold on a second. So the first one here. Darcy, do you find companies need to be proactive now? Otherwise, oh yeah, oh absolutely. I think that. So Darcy, I'm going to give you two answers to that. I think that the short answer is yes. I think the longer answer is ignorance is not bliss, and you can pretend you're not going to be impacted. And if you close your eyes when you open it, I mean, let's go back to the taxi cabs, right? Now they're kind of stuck in a sense that they had a government regulation and medallions and all that stuff that goes with it. But I think a lot of companies are really starting to get that if they don't do something, now the problem is that you have a culture that isn't, some companies have a culture that is not conducive to quick change. So, it's an interesting dynamic to watch, that's for sure. Glenn had one. Glenn. Yeah, Glenn, trust me. Yeah. So Glenn's question here is how to overcome the usual catch-22 of learning a new skill, but blah 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 blah, right? But
needing experience, yeah. But needing the experience to get the job. Yep.
Yeah, Glenn, I'll tell you. I'm going to give you my view of this. So my view is, and I'll share with something I'm working on right now. So one of the topics I'm getting much more educated on and deep into is cloud architecture specific to what they call cloud native. And cloud native means microservices, Docker, Kubernetes, DevOps, all of that. Now, I think there's two different ways to do this. I think when it comes to a programming language, I think a programming language is a little bit harder because you actually have to, put your hands on the keyboard, and coding isn't something that you can quote unquote fake, right? So let's take programming out of this a second. I think thematically, when you look at and I'm going to use cloud as an example. How are you thinking about cloud? To me, becomes a thought leadership challenge. And if you start writing about it, if you start talking about how it would change an existing process, if you can talk about how there's going to be obstacles within a company, if you can talk to having a certification behind it, what you start building is a narrative. And I think on some of these tech, and then if you can apply it to an existing use case and say, and here's how it disrupts it, and here's how you navigate it, you might not have all the I's dotted and T's crossed, but you put enough thought leadership into this that it's more than just basic BS. So, some people say, oh, well, cloud is, I just get to go to cloud and I get to go provision something. Or, it's on-demand computing. And I'm like, well, okay, fine. Well, what does that mean to me? I'll give you one of my favorite responses. What does failover mean to you? Do you understand what failover and DR and BC means in the cloud? And what is the overall impact and cost implications to a company? That just transcended knowing cloud to really getting into, damn, there's a lot that's there. So, I think also what you're seeing from a lot of companies anymore is that they're not looking for the degrees, but they're looking for, how have you educated yourself? And this is why I go back to LinkedIn. I think you have to put a diary out on LinkedIn if you're going from that A to become a Q. I think you have to use the diary because the diary kind of backs it up. And I don't know any other way to do it at this point. So I know that doesn't completely answer it, but that to me is what I would call the skeletal foundation to make it happen. And again, with so many things to know, I think the fact that you being able to bring 2 or 3 of those pieces together and understanding the business impact or the business outcomes, I think changes the conversation greatly. Because most people don't have it. Their heads are down doing the same old stuff. And when they see these disruptive technologies come to play, they can ask for anything that they want.
Question from Vince. How does someone demonstrate an expertise in soft skills which spans across all the core connections?
So, and maybe this is something, David, that just gave me a quick idea. Maybe one of the things we have to do as part of this that could be valuable are some whiteboarding sessions. Because, Vance, what I'm thinking about this is, if I were a CIO or a CTO and I were to ask you a really detailed question, like here's the whiteboard marker, go to the board and talk to me. Can you do it or can't you? And to me, a thought skill talks about real business impact. And to me, it's the more you can talk to the problem space and the attributes of that problem space, I think that just makes you seem much more, viable than just, spitting back basic facts. Sherry, for ageism, I think there's all types of isms that are out there. What I would say to you is, if you can show people that you can take your existing skill set and apply it to what's coming, and show people that you are conversant in all the new stuff that's coming, I think there's a lack of people out there that can do that. And again, I see this all the time. I see people that will stand up and tell me how good they are at what they've done, and I don't doubt it. But the problem is do they know how to take that and understand what the impact is that these companies are facing, and can they help navigate it? AI and cloud.
I'm sorry, George. Let's just read the question because on the video they won't see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it says, do you see AI and cloud as the next new future? What is adaptability rate in these technologies, and how long? AI and cloud are going to become table stakes. They're not going away. They're just going to keep growing. So I would tell you to I would tell you that those are probably two good spaces that if I had to say to you what are core skills going to be, cloud, just understanding what cloud is, not even from a technology perspective, understanding what cloud is going to be a core requirement. And I would tell you that understanding how to think in AI terms, which is largely data-based, and understanding that you can't give AI enough data and that AI needs to sift through enormous amounts of data. I think that that's something to focus. I'll tell you what, you're not wasting your time on any one of those. And David, I have a hard 11:30 stop.
Yeah, and so good. And it seems like we're at the end of the questions right now, so
Yeah.
fine. George does have his contact. We did have his contact information. You've got means to contact him as well. And so, George, thank you so much. As always, this is a wonderful presentation. You know, there are lots of disruptions, some that we know of for a while, like the economy or hiring practices or laws, industry regulations that change. Those tend to be almost ordinary. Maybe they happen a little bit slowly. We've seen them before, but these technology disruptions, they're new and they move very quickly and they can be more complex. And I think George really shed a lot of light on that. And you know, the question about ageism or do I need a new degree, which really was just touched on, probably not likely. Ageism is really an issue. You know, if you're current with this, get a certification. You don't need a new bachelor's or master's degree, but get a certification and you can demonstrate your interest and your ability to talk the talk here and walk the walk. Ageism won't be a factor. You'll be able to be hired into these new positions. George talked about lifelong learning, whether it's a certification or other means. I talked earlier about at PSG of Mercer County, we have an e-learning page. There are 37 e-learning websites. So go take a look at them. It's on our webpage, right on the, from the main website, there's a menu on the top, press the menu item, professional certification. I'm sorry, it's not that. It is professional development, and in there is a link for e-learning, and you go to that page. Kind of funny, George mentioned about maybe in the future there'll be contactless banking, and I think George and I talked about this once before. My bank, or one of my banks, the one for my business, is Fulton Bank of New Jersey. I happened to go to the branch in Somerville. They have no cash. It is not a cash bank. The tellers are more like customer service kiosks and not behind bulletproof glass where you can't get behind. And so I was making a deposit and spoke with the teller and I said, you know, how does banking work now? She had no cash at her desk. If I needed to make a withdrawal, she put in some sort of code in the computer, and then I would walk over to the ATM on the other part and just pull it out. So between me and the teller, there was very little contact. It was really more of a customer service experience and not a more traditional banking experience. A lot of things are going to change. So just want to let you know or remind you, George's slide deck, it's a very robust slide deck, is now online on our website, psgofmercercounty.org. On the right side middle of the website, there's a link. So go to our website, and on the right side sidebar is a link called Meeting Presentation Documents. This is a meeting. Those are the presentation documents. And so George's is there. You can download the slide deck. It's a PDF. Also, by this afternoon, if not by this afternoon, by early tomorrow morning, the video of this session will be online as well. The link will be in that same place in Meeting Presentation Documents. And also on the right side, you can go to the link to our YouTube channel. All of our videos for the last 12 weeks are there. We've been doing this since March 20th, and all of our presenters allowed us to record these sessions, so that worked out nicely. If you are not yet on our emailing list, if you're visiting us for the first time, just send me an email, psgofmercercounty@gmail.com, psgofmercercounty gmail.com. Just let me know that we met on this session and you would like to be added to our email list. I will be happy to do so. And the same if you want to join our LinkedIn group. If you and I don't know each other, or if I can't figure out that you've been here, because we do keep our LinkedIn group just for our members, just send me an email letting me know. Want to let you know what's coming up the next couple of weeks. Next week, I'm really excited. Coach Kerry Zumas will be here to talk about the ABCs of success. So this really goes beyond just job search, but really a mindset for success. And I've seen this presentation before. It's really fun. She's a sweet, fun lady, and it's her presentation style, and it's a powerful, fun presentation. So next week, June 12th, Kerry Zumas will be here for the ABCs of success. The next week is June 19th. John Hadley, our friend John Hadley, will be back interviewing in the COVID-19 era. So really, he's done a lot of research on what this disruption has caused for us in the job search market, and we'll be talking about interviewing in the COVID-19 era. Remember George's Facebook page, where he has all of his weekly webinars, facebook.com/keeppace, all one word with 2 P's, facebook.com/keeppace. And also other groups are virtual as well. The Breakfast Club of New Jersey always meets on the second Saturday of the month. It's going to meet on June 13th, which is Saturday at 8 in the morning. It's regular meeting day and time. Eileen Sinnett will be the presenter. She'll be presenting virtually. Body language for job seekers. And I did get to speak with Eileen just last week. I'm really interested to see her do a body language presentation virtually, but she is very adept at doing so. So body language for job seekers. And this is even more relevant now that we're virtual. How do we get our convey a sense of interest and importance and yada yada all through the screen? So will be important. Now that's going to be thebreakfastclubnj.com, thebreakfastclubnj.com. Go to the website to get the link. Our cousin organization, PSG of Central New Jersey, our Carl Reed will be joining them, Power Networking in the Social Media World. So that's on Monday, June 8th at 10:30. Check out their website, psgcnj.biz, for all the information. And then one of the oldest job seeker support groups around is New Jersey Job Seekers. They are now returning to being virtual. And so they meet every Tuesday evening at 7:30 in the evening. They have done so since, give or take, the early 80s. They are now back to virtual. I posted the link to that group on our PSG of Mercer County LinkedIn group. It's a posting there. They don't have it up on their website, so I just copied it. I got the link and I posted it there. So if you're interested in joining job seekers, 7:30 to 8:30 in the evening on Tuesday evening. So once again, thank you, George. Thanks to George for participating, a great friend of our group. Thank you, everyone, for being able to participate and join with us this morning. I hope you have a very happy and safe week, and we will look forward to seeing you again virtually next week. And have a happy Aloha Friday, and go grab a donut. Remember, it's Happy Donuts Day, National Donuts Day today. Bye-bye, everybody.